Hello, I'm Mr. Luis, and today we'll be diving into Fagen et al.'s 2014 study on elephant training using positive reinforcement. This study demonstrates how elephants in Nepal were trained to voluntarily participate in a trunk washing procedure without using punishment. It shows the power of positive reinforcement in animal welfare, especially when training captive animals. Before we dive into the study, it's important to understand the difference between two key concepts in learning: classical conditioning and operant conditioning. These two types of learning are quite different, and understanding them will help you grasp the psychology behind Fagen et al.'s study. Classical conditioning is a form of learning where we associate one thing with another. It focuses on involuntary behaviors, which are automatic responses to certain stimuli. A classic example is Pavlov's experiment with dogs. Pavlov discovered that dogs could learn to salivate at the sound of a bell even when no food was presented, simply because the bell had been consistently paired with food. The dogs didn't choose to salivate at the bell. It happened automatically. This is what we call an involuntary response. In classical conditioning, the idea is that a neutral stimulus like the bell becomes linked to an unconditioned stimulus like food and triggers an involuntary response such as salivating. Now, operant conditioning works a bit differently. This type of learning is all about learning through consequences. In operant conditioning, we perform a behavior voluntarily because we expect a certain outcome or consequence. For example, if a child gets praise or a treat for doing something right, they are more likely to repeat that behavior in the future. This is because the child has learned that doing the behavior results in a positive consequence. Unlike classical conditioning, where the response is automatic, in operant conditioning, the behavior is voluntary. The individual has control over the action, like pressing a button to receive food in a Skinner box. To summarize, classical conditioning involves associating two things to produce an automatic response. It deals with involuntary reactions, like a dog salivating when it hears a bell because it has learned that the bell means food. Operant conditioning, on the other hand, is about learning through consequences. It involves voluntary behavior, where we choose to do something based on whether we think the consequence will be positive or negative. Now that we've covered the difference, let's turn to Fagen et al.'s study. This study focuses on operant conditioning, specifically how elephants can be trained using positive reinforcement. The researchers wanted to see if elephants, traditionally trained with punishment, could be trained to engage in a trunk washing procedure using rewards instead. This is a clear example of operant conditioning because the elephants voluntarily perform the behavior, trunk washing, in exchange for a reward, food. They learn to associate performing the behavior with a positive consequence, which is the core of operant conditioning. The method. In Fagen et al.'s study, the researchers used a controlled observation to track and record the behavior of 5 female elephants, including 4 juveniles and 1 adult, as they were trained using secondary positive reinforcement. The goal was to explore whether elephants, traditionally trained through punishment, could learn to perform a health-related task, such as participating in a trunk washing procedure, using a method that prioritized their welfare. In this case, a sound marker, like a whistle, was paired with food rewards, helping the elephants associate the sound with the reward. Over time, this helped reinforce their willingness to voluntarily engage in the trunk washing procedure, which is crucial for tuberculosis testing, without any physical coercion. The elephants spent most of the day grazing in the jungle, but they were trained during specific hours when they were most receptive, typically in the morning and late afternoon. Each training session involved a series of tasks, including trunk here. The elephant places the end of its trunk in the trainer's hand. This was taught using lure, chopped banana in trainer's hand. Trunk up. The elephant lifts its trunk upwards to allow saline or water to run to the base of the trunk. This was also taught through lure and shaping. Trainer lifts chopped banana above head, so elephant reaches trunk upwards. Bucket. The elephant places its trunk in the bucket for collection. Lure was used with chopped banana placed at the bottom of the bucket. Blow. The elephant exhales into the bucket for sample collection. Capture and shaping were used to encourage natural exhale and further reward. Steady, the elephant holds the position for the required amount of time. Shaping was used to extend the duration of this task, rewarding longer holds. The elephants gradually learned to associate the sound of the whistle with these tasks, and their participation in the entire procedure became voluntary. As the study progressed, the results became clear. All 4 juvenile elephants successfully engaged in the trunk washing procedure. The key here was that the elephants did so voluntarily without the need for any coercion or physical punishment. Their success rate steadily improved over time, starting at 39% after just 10 sessions and rising to 89.3% after 35 sessions. However, one elephant, the adult elephant, struggled to complete the full trunk washing task, mainly due to environmental distractions. This elephant, who was estimated to be in her 50s, was reported to have possible visual impairment and trunk weakness, which may have contributed to her difficulty in completing the task. Despite this, the study demonstrated that secondary positive reinforcement could successfully train juvenile elephants, even those accustomed to being trained with punishment. Conclusion: Fagen et al. Concluded that elephants, traditionally trained through punitive methods, can indeed be successfully trained using positive reinforcement. This method of training, especially when combined with secondary reinforcement, such as sound markers, is not only more humane but also results in more lasting behavior change. This approach proved to be effective in guiding the elephants through specific tasks and enhancing their well-being. Strengths and weaknesses. There are several strengths in this study. First, the controlled observation allowed the researchers to track the elephant's behavior with precision. The use of quantitative data also made it easier to assess the success of the training over time. Positive reinforcement being the central method of training is another strength, as it avoids the ethical issues associated with using punishment. However, there are also some weaknesses to consider. The sample size was small, only 5 elephants, so the results may not apply universally to all elephants or other species. Additionally, the study focused on a very specific task, trunk washing, and it's unclear whether the same methods would be effective for training elephants in other tasks. Ethical issues. From an ethical standpoint, the study was well designed. It prioritized the elephants' welfare, allowing them to graze and socialize with one another, and the training process itself was non-invasive. The elephants were not harmed, and no punishment was used, which aligns with ethical guidelines for captive animal welfare. In summary, Fagen et al.'s study provided strong evidence that positive reinforcement is a highly effective ethical way to train elephants. By using this method, the elephants were able to engage in a critical health procedure, all without the use of punishment. The study also highlighted the potential for secondary reinforcement, such as using sound markers, to guide animal behavior, marking a more humane and effective approach to training animals in captivity. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next class where we will study Saavedra and Silverman. Goodbye.